Hello and welcome to episode number 7 of my podcast. This week I slipped into conversation with Lizzie from @HiveKnits. She's someone who I've kind of wanted to talk to for a while because I've followed her on Instagram pretty much when she kind of started. I think her knits are really interesting and really good quality. So yeah, she's someone who I've kind of wanted to talk to for quite a bit. Next week's episode will be the last of the season, season 1 of the podcast. But I have recorded season 2. And I'm currently editing that, so there'll be a little gap between season 1 and season 2. I'll update you when the next season is going to come out, and I'll drop a little teaser on who I've got for the next season. So currently I am working on some patterns. If you heard last week's episode, you would have known that I made a website. So my website is now live. It has things that are related to my knitting, links to the podcast episode. So if you are listening to this, there's links to like the YouTube or the Instagram version if you want to watch the podcast as well. And it's also got my patterns on there as well, which is one of the main reasons why I wanted to put a website together. At the moment I have 2 free patterns on there, but I'm also looking for test knitters. I have just completed, I've completed a medium-sized dog sweater, and I'm currently writing it up in different sizes. And looking for test knitters. Love for people to come and try the pattern out. I'm hoping I can sell it soon, but I need to get people to try it out on different size dogs. So at the moment I'm currently working on the smaller size, and that's kind of like for pugs and kind of terriers and that kind of size dog. At the moment the medium sized dog is good for kind of Frenchies, Cocker Spaniels, those kind of medium-sized dogs. If you'd like to be a pattern tester, head on over to my website, and there's links in the knitting section to becoming a pattern tester. And yeah, hopefully I'll have them for sale soon as well. Also on the website, I also have a pattern that needs to be tested for my Love Me Honey sweater that I created. It's quite a simple pattern. It's just kind of one size, and I'm trying to work out how to word it so it's more inclusive, so more people can try and wear it. But I need some people to have a look at it and kind of give me some tips and some hints on how to write it so it's a bit more inclusive. But really would love your feedback. These are free patterns that people can try out at the moment. I'm only going to give it to a certain number of people, but there's a little form that you can fill out on the website. This is a really nice kind of long episode. If you're watching this episode, then here is a photo of Lizzie in her full kind of gear that she has to wear when she's kind of near patients and stuff, kind of around COVID patients. If you're listening to this, then if you head on over to the blog of this episode, I'll have a little image of her in her gear if you want to have a look. So in this episode we talk about what is a junior doctor and what it's like being a young doctor or a doctor in these kind of COVID times. We also talk quite a lot about knitting. This is quite a knitting heavy episode if you're into that. So we talk a bit about blocking, we talk about magic socks, we talk about how knitting and crafting is really good for your mental health. We talk about how great this knitting community is. If you're part of this knitting community, you know. We also talk about being a test knitter. She also checked out one of the patterns and kind of like looked it over. So she's a really good pattern tester. She kind of knows what she's doing, and she's done quite a lot of pattern testing. We also talk about substituting yarn and how if you put in a little bit more time, you can work out what's a good substitution. We talk about a beanbag chair and a jumper as well. That there's links down in the description if you want to go and check them out a little bit more. And then in this episode, you'll also find out what I used to use as kind of stoppers on the ends of my needles when I didn't really know that stoppers were a thing. I'll be back at the end of the episode with just a little bit more chat, and we start the conversation with me asking how she got into knitting.
So I got into knitting in a bit of a funny way. It was about 2 years ago. I was on placement in GP practice as part of my training, and the way it worked with the clinics was that I had a really early morning clinic and then a really big gap, and then another one that started about 3:15 in the afternoon, ran to about 6. And I wasn't really sure what to do in those lunch breaks, and I made friends with the receptionists at the GP practice, and one of them, big shout out to Cynthia, taught me to knit, because I saw a little neonatal hat that was on her desk that she'd made. I said, "Oh, that's really nice. Did you make that?" And she said yes, and then told me about it. And then one thing led to another. She brought me in some needles and some yarn, and I just loved it and took it up myself after that, and here we are.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I did have a little scroll back, and it looked like you started your account in 2019. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So was your first project? Sorry, I'm just trying to scroll back again. Was your first project that jumper that you posted, or had you done any knitting before, or was it just?
No, never. No. Actually, maybe when I was really young, I think my mum tried to do a bit of knitting with me, just like a scarf, but I just never got it really. I remember I had to get her to do all the casting on and casting off, and it was just really awful, like loads of holes, and so I'd never done any since then. And so I think the first thing I made was, she gave me the pattern for this hat, so I had to go at that. But I remember the needles were so small. They must have been, her needles were in the old measurement system, but they must have been no more than like 2 or 3 millimeters. And the yarn was proper like sport, like baby yarn. Mm-hmm. So now I look back and I think, why did she try and start me off on that? But I think that's just what she had to hand. But after the baby hat, I remember that was nearly Christmas. And then for Christmas, I asked for a Wool in the Gang voucher, because I saw their stuff on Instagram and was like, oh, this is great, good for beginners. And I ordered, I remember it was the Hero cardigan. It's like with the wool, crazy sexy wool, the really big chunky wool. So that was my first proper project, which was great because I was on, I think, 15 millimeter needles, and yeah,
it looks like kind of 15 mil. Yeah, I can see the cardigan. Like my parents' generation and stuff like that, they love using fin needles and like fin wool. Like that's how they kind of knitted. I think, like speaking to a lot of other people, like our generation, we prefer like chunkier needles. And I think if you're trying to get into knitting, I think having chunky needles and chunky wool really helps, because you can actually see progress. Like you can spend half an hour and you can actually have like a good amount of a scarf. But if you spend half an hour with like fin wool, you're still casting on.
Yeah, definitely. And you can see your mistakes a bit easier as well in chunky wool, can't you?
Yeah, I think you can also kind of hide things a bit better as well sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny actually, because as I definitely started off with chunky stuff and really like that. But as I've got more confident and started different projects and learnt new techniques, I kind of have noticed that I've started making stuff with like thinner and thinner yarn.
Yeah, you can see that on your Instagram. Yeah, I think I've kind of started doing that as well, because I'm getting quicker and quicker. A part of me wants projects to last a little bit longer, and if it's so chunky, then it's just it's done within a few days.
Yeah, takes ages to dry as well. Chunky knitting.
I do want to talk to you about that, because I don't do blocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really do it. Partly because we don't have the space in our apartment to. Like we don't have a bathtub, so we can't put it anywhere. Like I would have to fill up the kitchen sink, and then there's no space to dry it, especially with a dog.
Yes.
But how much of a difference do you think it makes blocking your work?
I never used to block anything. I think when I was knitting like more chunky things, and to be fair, I'm not sure that you need to with chunkier stuff, because it just holds its shape a bit more, just because of the structure and how the fibre comes together when you knit it. And then I always saw blocking on knitting patterns and thought, oh, I'll not bother with that. It just seemed like a faff at the end, and I just wanted to wear it, and I never bothered with it. And then I looked a bit more into it, and I think I saw someone's video on Instagram. I can't remember who it was, and they explained a few different techniques. So you can kind of do a few different things. The way I normally block stuff now is like full wet blocking, which is when after you finish something, you soak it in like warm water. I now add a bit of like wool wash. There's a few different ones you can use. I use soak, which smells lovely. And you kind of soak it for 15 minutes ish, and then roll it up in a towel, try and get most of the water out, and then pin it out on your blocking mat and let it dry. So I find that to give a really nice finish. But it is quite time consuming and needs quite a lot of space. But other things you can do, you can just like if you have like a mister for plants, like a spritzer thing, you can just spritz your knitting, and then it's just slightly damp, and pin it out, and that takes less time to dry. And some people steam block as well with an iron or like a clothes steamer. I've never done that because I'm always a bit scared of like the heat on the fibres, but I know some people do that for chunkier stuff and say it works really well.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I think if we got a bigger place and we were able to have a craft room that I could lock the dog away, then I think
that is the dream, a craft room.
Yeah,
I've actually got a little hat blocking just now. I'll show you. Did it before the podcast.
Oh, that's cool.
I used to just do it with water, just to kind of see how it worked before I invested in any products. And to be honest, that was like, I think that gives it the suppleness to then shape it nicely. But I have found that soaking it with a little bit of product, it kind of softens the yarn a bit and just makes it really nice to wear. I have to say, I wasn't a believer in blocking, and I'm a convert to blocking. I'm fully able to admit that I've had my mind changed.
I think that's something that I've heard quite a few times. Is a lot of people have said, I never bothered with it, I didn't see the point, and then I started doing it, and now I do it all the time.
Yeah, I heard someone said the phrase, I think my mum told me, blocking turns a garment from homemade to handmade. It just like gives it that little finesse. And it just, as well, sometimes, even if you try really hard with your gauge and you think you've got your gauge swatch perfect, sometimes when you finish and you put something on, you think, oh, that's not quite right. But then you can just tease it out with blocking it to your right measurements, and it can make a massive difference.
Okay, that's good to know.
So yeah, blocking.
Maybe I'll give it a go at some point.
Yeah, I do. I'd be interested to see what you think.
Yeah. I saw that you did the magic sock pattern as well. From one of the gang. How did you find that?
Yeah, kind of it's a love-hate relationship. I ended up loving it, to be fair, and I really like the finished products, but I really struggled to get the gauge. Like, I was amazed when I saw that you'd done them so quickly. I was like, that is incredible, because honestly, I flip-flopped between, when I ordered my pack, I got 3 different needle sizes. And I must have gone through all of them, and they still weren't right. And I remember buying an extra set. I think it was 3 millimeters, and that still wasn't right. And I just nearly like threw it on the floor in a rage. Like, how? I don't understand how I'm supposed to get the gauge. And then I just picked it up after a couple of weeks, and suddenly it just worked.
Yeah, I think I found with like my knitting style is like my gauge is usually pretty much bang on for one of the gang. So I seem to have the right tension for them. And a little confession, it did take me quite a while to knit those socks. I started them just before Christmas, but I had a bit of a gap just before Christmas, I think, because everyone was posting, everyone was trying to sell stuff, and I was just like, I'm gonna step away for Christmas time, and then I started posting them. So it did take me a week or so, but because I didn't stop to take photos, I didn't really have anything else that I was working on. I was just knitting those socks.
They're quite handy to take with you places, aren't they? Because they're so small compared to like big jumper projects. Or
yeah, although I have found out those needles are incredibly delicate.
I know, I saw that you snapped one.
Yeah, I don't even know how I did it. I think I put them in my drawer, and when I closed the drawer, it must have got caught on something. And when I took it out, it was snapped. And I was like, great. But luckily,
I know.
Yeah, when I started, I bought one of those like mega sets of like needles of just like, it goes from gauge 1 to like all the way up to 10, I think. So I had hundreds of needles, and I nearly threw them away because I was like, I'm never going to work with anything below a 3. And luckily kept them, so I'm still able to keep working on a new sock. So,
Oh, that's so good. So you actually had a spare. That's very handy. Yeah, they are. I remember I took. We went. Feels like a lifetime ago, but we went traveling in Vietnam at the end of summer 2019, and I remember thinking, like I find myself getting all antsy if I don't have like a project. Like I need to take a project because there's quite a lot of like planes and buses and stuff. I thought this will be a good opportunity to do some knitting, but I didn't want to cart like a big sweater or like a big project around. So I thought, the socks will be perfect. But I remember being really worried that the needles were going to get broken somewhere on the travels, but they didn't.
Yeah, when I go traveling, well, when we used to be able to go traveling, I remember taking a project over to Portugal. I think we went to this like nice little like kind of villa place, and it was like all inclusive kind of thing. Not quite all inclusive, but yeah, I just took a knitting project and I was sitting on the beach knitting.
I know for us in the UK, you'd think that's weird, but people in like beachy countries probably do that all the time, don't they?
I follow a few people who, someone who lives in California, and they like to sit on the beach and knit, and it's like that would be cool.
I know, that's the dream. Whereas we get to sit looking out at the rain.
Yeah. I feel like this part of the lockdown is going to be the hardest for most people because it's grey now.
Yeah.
Like at least the first lockdown, it was sunny. It was quite nice. So you could enjoy the time outside a bit more. But
yeah, and you could go for your walk and it was nice rather than now it's like dodging showers, isn't it? And
let's go into, because you're a full doctor, right?
Full doctor.
Like, because I thought I read like a junior doctor, which I don't know the difference between a junior doctor and a
Junior doctor is a really confusing term because basically anyone who's not a consultant or a GP, so any doctor in training is a junior doctor, but people train, you go to university at 18 and then it's 5-year or 6-year course, you come out at say 23, and then it's up to 8 years if you do it full time to be a consultant. So people can be junior doctors up till they're like well into their mid 30s. So it is quite confusing.
Yeah, because I had a feeling the junior part was nothing to do with your age. It was the level of your training.
It kind of just means you're in training as opposed to trained.
Yeah, so rather than saying trainee doctor, which might put some people off or might make some people a bit more nervous, I think junior doctor does sound a little bit better to someone than...
I think sometimes when you say... It's difficult because junior sounds like you're really young, which isn't necessarily the case. But then trainee doctor sounds like you're maybe still in medical school, which isn't the case either. So it's kind of just having to explain it to patients sometimes.
How have you found that then?
Like work in general, or
how did you? How was it? When did you become like a full doctor, not junior doctor?
No, then so I am still a junior doctor.
Oh, you are still a junior. Okay, cool. I think I saw that you've changed your Instagram to doctor. I think that's why I'm just getting confused.
I think I graduated in summer of 2017. And then when you graduate, you do what's called like your foundation years, which means you are a qualified doctor, but it's a 2-year foundation program where you rotate around different types of jobs like medicine, A&E, surgery, GP, to kind of get a feel for what you want to do for the rest of your career. And then I decided I wanted to train to become a GP, which is 3 years training after the foundation training. But I had a year out of training between the end of foundation and starting GP training, which was meant to be a year of like locum work in A&E and for 6 months. And then I was going to go traveling to South America for 6 months. But obviously because of COVID, the traveling part didn't happen.
Yeah. So were you still able to take a bit of time off, or did you have to kind of get back in there and try and...
Yeah, well, it all just happened at the same time. So I was supposed to travel on the 1st of April, which is pretty much when I think we went into lockdown on the 23rd of March, didn't we? So it was almost like my bag was on the bed being packed. It was that close to going away. So it was a massive disappointment when we didn't go away. And I think in terms of like managing what to do with myself, I just ended up working a fair bit more in A&E, and there were more shifts and things because people were isolating and sick and stuff. So I actually ended up working pretty much all the way through to the summer, and then I started my GP training in August 2020.
Wow. That must have been quite scary. I mean, I remember seeing footage of hospitals kind of getting overwhelmed and stuff at the beginning, and I guess it's probably similar now, really, with this next wave.
I think the difficulty was, especially at the beginning, is that no one really knew how to, like, we'd never seen this before, and no one really knew what it was and how to treat it, and even what the symptoms were, and it just evolved so quickly. I think that was why particularly the first wave was so difficult to deal with. And yeah, I'm working in psychiatry at the moment, so
cool.
A lot of people have been struggling with their mental health as a direct consequence of COVID and lockdown. So I haven't been working in A&E and in the medical side or intensive care or anything, but it's just affecting like everyone.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Mental health is, I mean, I feel like nowadays people are a little bit more clued up with mental health and trying to maintain it. But obviously with COVID and people having to be locked down and not being able to see friends and family, a lot more people are struggling now. So
definitely, I think it's highlighted how much we all depend on seeing our friends and family and having a social life and being able to get out and do things.
Yeah, I mean, we are social creatures, really, aren't we? So are you enjoying working in the kind of GP and psychiatry kind of department at the moment?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to when I'm qualified as a GP. So you kind of do hospital work for the first 18 months, and then you do GP practice work for the last 18 months of your training. But my training was a bit interrupted this year because without going into massive details, as loads of people will have been experiencing, as we just talked about, like my own mental health just deteriorated a bit. So I actually had a bit of a break from training for about 6 weeks at the end of last year, which was a bit unexpected, but I'm back in work now. And I have to say, like, it sounds a bit of a cliche, but definitely sort of knitting and having like a craft and being able to do something creative helped during that time so much.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a common theme. Speaking to pretty much most people that I've spoken to, either actually in the podcast or just generally, that knitting has been a way, because I did a video about how I got into knitting, and it was to help with my struggles of anxiety and stress. But it's able just to like help focus your brain onto one thing for however, like, even if it's 10 minutes, I think it can be incredibly helpful.
Definitely. Just that kind of focus and not really being able to think about other things. But then there's a few different types, isn't it? Because some like patterns and projects you have to really concentrate on and you can't think about other stuff, and that's really helpful. But sometimes like just having a bit of mindless knitting that's like all stockinette or odd something while you're watching TV is also really nice, just to kind of just something kind of calming about it.
Yeah, I find I sometimes used to struggle with just watching TV because I felt like if you're watching TV, you're just kind of wasting time. So I felt when I was knitting, I was being productive, but able to like switch my brain off and just watch TV for a little bit. So
have you found that like crafting is helping you through furlough?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like if I didn't, I mean, I used to draw a long time ago as well. So if I wasn't knitting, I think the problem with me is that there's so many projects that I want to start and I want to do. Like I would love to get back into drawing. I've started this podcast, which is taking up a lot of time. I knit in the evenings. We've got our dogs that we got in the first lockdown, so we're going on nice walks. But yeah, there's so many projects that I would love to get on with, which I'm trying to take the most.
There's not enough time, is there?
There's not, and like I'm off full time, like I'm furloughed full time. So even furloughed full time, I could still do with another couple of hours in the day or another couple of days even.
Yeah, I think it's good to kind of be able to focus on something that you really enjoy though, because don't get me wrong, I do enjoy my work, but it is intense, and you probably find the same with your job. I think everyone does. So it's nice to just have. I never really had, before I started knitting, I never really had a sort of like a hobby before that you look forward to doing.
Yeah, I was kind of the same because I've been working in kitchens and restaurants for most of my life. Like all my working life, I've been working in kitchens and restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm at home, I like to cook. And I'm quite dyslexic, but so I don't do like a lot of like normal reading, like novels or whatever people normally like to read. But like I quite enjoy reading cookbooks. I like going through them, looking at different techniques, looking at different recipes. That's the type of reading that I like to do, which is quite different to what probably most people do. But yeah, I didn't really have it as a kind of outlet. Bit of drawing every now and again, but yeah, knitting has become the biggest outlet for sure.
Yeah, definitely like creatively, but also kind of through Instagram and meeting people and talking to people. It's so nice to find it's just a whole network of people that enjoy doing the same thing.
Yeah,
that's been probably been a huge support for all different people during this really weird time.
Yeah, for sure. I think social media gets a lot of bad press, and part of me kind of understands a little bit because
yeah, definitely.
Like Twitter is, I don't know, it seems quite hateful. I'm not on Twitter.
I've had to stop, like, I deleted it from my phone because I just found it really awful.
Yeah, I think Twitter seems really toxic. Facebook seems to be full of the older generation and conspiracy theories. Instagram, I think if you follow the right people and the right community, it can be really helpful. I know the knitting community and the craft community is amazing, and everyone's there to help support each other. And I think we're all, like I said, most people that I've spoken to have had the common theme of this has helped them with their mental health. So everyone's kind of on that same kind of level and wavelength, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's a fine balance, isn't it? Because you got to not be drawn into the trap of constantly like comparing yourself to other people, and it's very easy to see people's. I always think Instagram's a bit like a highlight reel. You kind of see people's. It's not real life, which is why when there are people on there that kind of show you what their life looks like, I find that more difficult. But when it's like a community that like is supporting each other, and you know, if you show a project that you've started and people say, oh, that's amazing, and like it's just, it seems more supportive than sort of competitive.
Yeah,
and
there's
that's
definitely
a healthy way to use it, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely accounts out there that like to show a certain lifestyle that they want to like create and show off. But I feel like most of the knitting community, I mean, everyone, there's so many people from different backgrounds, different sizes, just so many different types of people, but they just want to show off their work and get help with their work as well. So I think it's a bit more.
That's a massive thing.
Yeah. And it's just nice to see and hear from just different people. And like, I've been absolutely loving this podcast because I've been following you for quite a while, probably pretty much when you started, I think. Like when you only had like maybe a couple hundred followers, and now it's like, it's pretty big. Like you're very close to 2,000, which is pretty awesome. Especially because you're like a part-time, like knitter, full-time doctor. It's pretty awesome. But it's really nice to be able to talk to people who I've seen and admired their work.
Yeah, I think it's not like I found that within the community, it feels like everyone's page, there's like a real person behind it, and you can chat rather than just like a front and an image. Like it does feel like there's a person behind the pictures, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah. What other kind of like pages and stuff do you admire? Like, who's your inspiration on Instagram?
So I love the Knit Pearl Girl. I've been following her for like, I feel like when I first started, like your page, her page, and a couple of others. Like, I just feel like I've been following them from when I first started. I really admire her work. She's just kind of quite recently started pattern designing, which is something that I'd really like to try if and when I have more time. And she's just really friendly and very real as well. So definitely would like to give her page a shout out.
Awesome. Yeah, I follow them as well.
And my mind's gone completely blank for others. Let me just have a look.
Yeah, you can be lucky you found, like, I feel like it's hard to remember because there's so many.
Hard to remember.
And there's so many accounts out there that are just awesome.
I'm going to probably pronounce this wrong. Colibri by Joanna. Have a lot of respect for her work. This is actually one of her patterns that I'm wearing. It was an unintentional
Nice.
Advertisement just there. So as a test knitter for this is the Casper Sweater, which is a lovely pattern. And also love the Knit Stitches work and her page as well. There's a test knitter for her Seasons Change cardigan back in last spring, summer, which was actually my first ever test knit, and it was so fun. Really enjoyed it, and I've done a few more since.
I haven't really, like, I've seen people doing the test knit thing, and I've looked at writing my own patterns, and there's a few people who are interested in being test knitters, but I don't really know exactly what that involves. Or
I've never asked for test knitters, but I've been a test knitter a few times now, and it's just quite fun because you feel like you're helping someone with like their creation, which is really nice. And it's nice to kind of see, like, if you know there's a few of you who are testing the same pattern, people are quite good at sort of posting updates on their work and stuff, so it's really nice to see like how other people are making the same pattern kind of almost in real time.
That's cool,
which I really like. And just kind of seeing, even though we're all following the same pattern, making it in different colors and sizes and on different bodies, it's just really nice to see how someone's pattern can come to life but look so different on different people.
That's really cool. Do you usually follow a pattern, or do you like to like free work?
I would pretty much always follow a pattern, I think. I think it's like partly a confidence thing, as in like knowing what I'm doing, and also there's just so many patterns. Like, my list on my phone of patterns that I want to make is just like ever expanding. So that's probably one reason why I use patterns as well. But then, like, while I was off work, I did start kind of like trying to design my own pattern, and it's hard work. That's like one of the things I took away from it. So I think it is something I really want to like follow through and actually do properly. But I'm actually, when I switch to my next job in February, I'm going to be 80% instead of 100% working. So I'll have one day a week where I'm not in work. So I want to use that as like a knitting day to try and expand like my account and work on my own pattern and things like that, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm looking forward to that. Nice.
But I know you don't follow, like, you often don't follow patterns, which is very clever.
I just kind of started learning through videos on YouTube, mainly One on the Gang kind of videos, because I think they're very good.
Yeah, they are very good.
I just started learning different techniques, and then I followed a few patterns, mainly from One on the Gang, because they're very simple patterns. When I've looked at other patterns before, it just looks like a different language. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm really bad at remembering the little shorthands that they have for things.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'll start doing it, and I'm like, I don't know what that bit is. So
it's like a different language, isn't it? You're right. It's like I remember when I first started looking at patterns, and it's like a code.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Especially some of the very old-fashioned patterns, like that very first one I saw when I said the Cynthia receptionist gave me the baby hat pattern. That was like a really old pattern that had been handed down in her family, I think. And it was all written in shorthand. And I just remember thinking, I've just probably spent a good couple of hours Googling all the abbreviations and being like, right, that's that.
And the abbreviations, generally speaking, they're kind of standardized. But if you find like older patterns, I feel like their abbreviations are different. So I think nowadays it's a bit more standardized, but like, I think there's different codes and stuff for like UK patterns and US patterns, for example. So
yes, I think people are better nowadays at explaining like quite a lot of the patterns I've tested, and like a couple I've proofread, you know, for like translation to English and stuff. People are very good at listing all the abbreviations at the start and like trying to explain what they mean in kind of like layman's terms, which is really important because you don't know, like you can say whether your pattern is beginner, intermediate, advanced or whatever, but you kind of don't know how experienced someone is who might be reading your pattern. So I think the more explanation you put into it is the better. And some people make their own videos and things to explain complex stitches and things, and that's really clever.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I like the Wool and the Gang patterns, is because they have such a big catalog of videos on every technique that they use that's in a pattern. They've got a video for it, and they've usually got like a little link or so. So yeah, but I've tried pattern writing, and it is something I'm determined to do this year. But I always make really good notes at the beginning, kind of crappy notes in the middle, and then notes right at the end, because I'm like, oh yeah, I was meant to be making notes, and
yeah, and you just get carried away, don't you? And you think, oh, I didn't write down how I did that bit.
Yeah, and like most of the way I like to knit is I'm just experimenting, and like because I don't have a timeline or anything, it doesn't matter if I do go wrong. I can just take it back and work out from my mistakes.
Yeah, I think with pattern writing as well, I think actually writing the pattern is probably only half the job, because then you have to like grade it into all the different sizes, and that just terrifies me. Like I've seen some people showing their process of doing that, and it just looks like multiple Excel spreadsheets, which kind of makes me feel a bit sick. But I can imagine very satisfying when it's done and all the numbers like work, and you can send it to your testers and you know they can actually make something from it. Like I think that's what I, other than designing a garment, which would be amazing, but also like writing something that sort of people that I respect within the community can read and then make something from themselves. Like that's just would be really quite an achievement, I think.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that I've spoken to a couple of people about, and I think the way that I would want to write a pattern would be very different, and I would make the reader have to do a little bit of work so that they can make it fit them better. So I'll do the idea of the shaping and the pattern, but I would ask them to measure themselves and then have like a simple calculation on how many stitches they'll actually need.
That's interesting.
So I think that's an easier way to do one pattern, but that can ideally fit anyone. That's the idea I have. But I mean, there could be a reason why you don't really see that, is because it's too complicated. So
maybe, but then once you put the work in and worked out that formula, because like again nowadays, like it's nice to see some designers and some patterns becoming much more size inclusive, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other thing as well is that I would want to do it so you can use different wools, but like generally the same kind of weight of a wool. But like I wouldn't expect everyone to buy some crazy sexy wool from Wool and the Gang, because it's really expensive. Like if you can buy a drops cheaper wool and do the same thing, it's more inclusive then for your budget as well as size.
Yeah, definitely. I've become like, I don't want to use the word obsessed, but I've become quite like a keen interest in like yarn subbing, and I just think it's so satisfying if you can try and, because I used to just look at yarn and think, well, surely you could just sub that for that, and I never really understood. But now I'll look really carefully at like the suggested needle size, and like I used to just think it was all about the tension that they give on the yarn, you know, like from the makers of the yarn. But now I look at like the yardage and stuff, and like it like makes sense a lot more. And if you sub something and then it works and you get the right gauge, it's really satisfying.
It is, yeah. I get that, because I try to make because I did the Boy the Back sweater, and then I did like my version, and I didn't have enough money to buy some more Wool and the Gang yarn, so I tried to use something that I thought was a similar weight, but wasn't really in the end when I was actually like.
What was that?
I called it Dancing in the Moonlight, and I used some wool that I got from Hobbycraft. Yeah, I called it Dancing in the Moonlight because the other one was The Boys Are Back. So it just made me think of Thin Lizzy, and Dancing in the Moonlight is one of my favourite Thin Lizzy songs. So that's where the
really
name
cool.
came from.
I've seen a few, I think it was on the Knit Pearl Girls blog. She's done a couple of posts on like comparing very similar yarns and kind of like a luxury option and a budget option, because there's like I have got quite into sort of like mohair knitting recently, either on its own or like with another fibre, because I think it just like changes the fibre completely. But mohair can be really, really expensive. But she did a nice comparison of a few different ones, like Knitting for Olive and Drops and maybe a Hobbycraft one, I can't remember. But it's definitely possible to substitute yarn to match your budget. You just have to spend a bit of time like thinking about it, and sometimes you do have to just take the plunge and just buy something and then see how it knits up and see how it swatches and stuff. But it's very satisfying if it works.
That's cool. Yeah, I think my girlfriend wants me to make something with that kind of wool, which I've not really done before, but I'm quite excited to have a go at doing something like that.
Yeah, it is nice. It's just the fluff gets like everywhere. Nice. I was just constantly like vacuuming our apartment because of all the fluff that comes out of my projects.
That's quite funny. Yeah, I tried doing some like massive chunky wool, like that arm knitting thing, and
oh yeah,
it just goes everywhere. It's like it looked. I was making a sweater originally at the first, and then it ended up turning into a cat bed. But it looked like
I saw that.
Yeah, it just kind of looked like the cat was just sleeping on my chest though, because like the fluff went everywhere. It was mental.
Yeah, I'd like to try that as well someday. But I always think with arm knitting, like once you start, how do you stop? Like, do you have to do it until you've finished?
I think so, and it gets heavier and heavier as well. Like I've only done like a small thing, so it's not been so bad. But I don't. Yeah, I would love to have like a proper go at it, but it's really expensive as well.
Yeah, the biggest thing I've ever made is I made a bean bag for my boyfriend's birthday.
I saw that
a year or so ago. Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago, and that was really fun. But I did that. I just used some paint box yarn for that, and doubled it up, so it just made like a really, really chunky fabric. That was a really fun project to make, but I had to hide it from him. Because obviously
How did you hide that?
Well, I had a willing accomplice. When I was on a palliative care placement in the hospital, and my consultant supervisor, we just bonded over knitting. Like, she absolutely loves knitting as well. So it was, we used to talk about it all the time, and it was so nice. Shout out to Laura Edwards if she listens to this. And I told her about my plans for this beanbag, and she just got so excited about it, and she helped me. So she let me hide the beanbag in her office at work, and I used to go after I'd finished work. I used to go and like work on it in her office, which was really nice of her. And she also, because I've never sewn, I don't have a sewing machine, I wouldn't know how to even start, but she sewed me with her sewing machine like a lining, an inner for the beanbag that matched the yarn. So then it became like this triangle thing, and she sewed some Velcro into it, and I could just siphon the beanbag beans in.
Perfect.
It was amazing. It was teamwork in the extreme.
It looks awesome. It looks so cool. Like, it looks really comfortable as well.
It's so comfortable because it's kind of like it's made. It's really hard to explain, but it's kind of made in like a triangle shape. So the front is kind of flat,
I'll put a photo
and then the back comes up into a triangle. Yeah. It is. Yeah, it's definitely my biggest make to date. I'm not sure what I could make that's bigger than that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
A blanket.
Like a sofa cover, maybe. How did you use circular needles, or how did you make that?
I love circular needles. I'm such a convert. I picked up some straight needles the other day. I can't remember what it was for, because I have circulars for most sizes, and I just was like, what's this? I found it really weird. But yeah, I used circular needles. I think they were 25s. They were really big. And I just knit it in 2 pieces. So basically did 2 massive rectangles and then attached them together at the front, and then ended up kind of twisting one like 90 degrees. So it made the triangle bit at the back.
Nice.
And yeah, basically just sewed it up like you would anything like mattress stitch, but just on a massive, massive scale, because it's just garter stitch, but it's just huge.
That's really cool. Yeah. Circular needles are awesome, especially when you're trying to travel as well, because it's easier to, like, they've got more space for them to like move around on.
Yeah. And heavy stuff, you can like, it's on the cord and the cord can be on your lap. So it takes the weight, and it just, it's so much better on your arms and wrists.
Yeah. Do you ever put the stoppers on the end if you're ever traveling or anything? Or yeah. Because I didn't know that was a thing, and because I've got like plugs in my ears, if it was like bigger stuff, I would have, if I had spare like plugs for my ears, I would stick those on the end to stop the ball coming off. But then I realized they were actually a thing, and I got a set.
Commercially available.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good. And then when I discovered interchangeable needles, that just blew my mind. One of my best purchases ever.
I've got a couple sets on my Etsy account which I'm saving for. I think I'm gonna get some in my birthday. I'm just gonna order a bunch.
Do it. Oh, just do it. They are so good, because you don't have to, like, when you change your needle size, say like you've done some ribbing and you're changing or whatever, you don't have to change your cord. You literally just unscrew it. It blew my mind.
It sounds great. And then I feel like you could, once you've done the ribbon bit and you've changed up a size, if you've got a spare cable, you can start doing the ribbon for like the next sleeve.
So good. And then because they come as a set, like you've just got all the needles that you could possibly need and all the different cord lengths, and so you can just combine them. Because I was making the York sweater by Darling J'adore like this time last year-ish, just going into the first lockdown, and it was the first like top-down sweater I'd made, which was very exciting. But because it was top-down, like it, and you're making like the yoke and the raglan, it grows and grows and grows and grows. So you're constantly having to like move up cable length. So it was on 4mm needles, and I remember buying some like in my naivety and being like, right, I've got a set of 4, that'll be fine. And then because it just grew and grew and grew, they weren't long enough. So I kept having to buy more and more. I was like buying all these needles on Amazon. I just thought, this is ridiculous. So that's when I got the interchangeable.
So that's another project that I want to do, is try and do a yoke and try and do a knitting from the neck down, because I've never done it. But
I'm such a convert now. Really like it.
Because I know that you've done like probably most of your jumpers kind of look like you've done, or at least the ones you've done lately have been like that.
Yeah, like this one's not. This one sews the sleeves on, but quite a few of the others, like this one, which is my design that I've kind of stopped doing, but I need to get back onto it. That's top down.
Oh, that's
so you
awesome.
can see how the raglan just increases. Yeah. And it's because then it's just seamless and you don't have to sew it up at the end, which is great.
That's very cool. I don't mind the sewing up at the end. Like I know a load of people hate it, but I don't.
Yeah.
I don't mind it.
Can't stand it.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
There's so many people that absolutely hate it, but yeah.
It's good if you like doing it. Don't get me wrong, because I just find that sometimes, like I've been making my boyfriend a jumper for more than 1 year, which is terrible. And I finally finished all the bits of it, like the sleeves and the front and the back. But one of the things that's just making me drag my feet with it is that I've got to sew it up. I don't know what it is about. It just feels like it's so nice once you finish something to then be able to wear it, whereas there's like another thing to do at the end.
Yeah. But I think it's just like I don't mind stitching up.
Yeah. I wish I was like that.
I think because I think once I learned how to do the technique properly, I was like, oh, you don't see the seam really at all. Like it's so much nicer.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's very clever. I remember when I first learned like the invisible seam or mattress stitch, I was like, oh, that's amazing. I think where I was going wrong was kind of like pulling it too tight, because you do want to just hide it, and then it all bunches up, and then it just all looks a bit naff.
Yeah, what's your favourite project?
Oh man, that's so hard. It's like the impossible question. So many favourites. I think definitely like more recently working with mohair, I've absolutely loved. Probably one of my favourites is Petite Knit's September sweater, which the one I finished the other day in the Drops Air and the Kid Silk was a present from my mum it was meant to be for Christmas, and then it was late, so it ended up being for her birthday. So she's got that now. So I feel like I finished it and barely had time to just love it, and then had to put it in the post. But I'm actually working on another one for me, which I started before hers and then got distracted, which is like an all mohair one.
Oh, nice.
And it's just the construction of the pattern is just incredible. You start with the back, and you basically knit this bit first, and then you pick up for the shoulder seams either side, and then you join in the round and add the neckband, and it's just so clever.
That's really cool. So you top going down?
Yeah, you literally start flat on the back, like knitting this bit flat, come down till about probably here, I think. And then when it looks like a kind of a triangle shape, you pick up, bring these shoulder seams up and over, and then you've kind of got them hanging there like two flaps. And then you knit down here, and then under where the arms are formed, you join on either side.
Amazing.
Like that. And then keep going knitting in the round until you get down to the ribbing at the bottom. And then you add the neck, and I just need to pick up and add the sleeves. I just think it's so, I think that's why I like it, because it's such a clever pattern.
It looks really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So need to finish that, but I didn't really want to rush it because it's such a nice pattern. So I don't mind that. It's taken me a while. So that's probably one of my favourite projects. So much so that I've made it twice.
That's really cool. Yeah, no, that looks awesome.
Yeah. I think I like patterns that are kind of like a challenge, like structurally, almost like a little engineering project.
Yeah. Yeah, I really want to learn some new techniques and styles, because I think because I make a lot of the stuff up, my style is relatively basic, but I'd love to expand on new techniques and stuff. No,
there's a whole world out there of amazing construction. Like even just to make a shoulder, there's so many different ways of doing it. Like you can do your two bits seamed together, or you can do a raglan, or I've seen some people have done like a saddle shoulder where you kind of knit down from the neckband and then like increases come out, and it's incredible. Yeah. It's amazing. I think people just underestimate knitting, don't they? That they don't. When you think of knitting, if you don't do it, you think of like grandmas and like sort of like old-fashioned clothes, like baby clothes. I feel like now there's so much modern stuff and so many amazing designers. Just for sure, like the techniques have grown massively for knitting and crochet. And do you ever find yourself, if you go into a shop and you kind of look down the clothes aisle, do you think, oh, I could have a go at knitting that, or that's different, I want to have a go at doing that pattern? Yeah, definitely. I think when I started like being able to properly like read knitting and read stitches and look at a garment and be like, that's stockinette, that's rib, that's whatever, it's like such a powerful tool, because you suddenly think, you go from just looking at a piece of clothing and thinking that's a nice piece of knitwear to like actually understanding it. And I think not in like a weird way, but looking at stuff in shops that's like really expensive or kind of like marketed as very unique, and you think actually I could make that with my own twists, and like that's amazing that you could actually make a garment similar to what you've seen but with your own take on it, just from like a ball of yarn. Yeah, I would love to do that if I had the money and the space and stuff. I would love to like find something that's really popular either on a TV show or like high in fashion or something, and then try and make my own version, but like make it a little bit more unique rather than just a straight up copy. I saw obviously copying's not the way forward. I saw I think it was I don't know if you watched The Crown, but there was a like episode of The Crown and Diana was wearing like her famous is it got sheep on, I think.
Yeah, I think I saw one of the gang post something about that.
And like making similar stuff to like really iconic knits from like, you know, the past and stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, I would love to have a go at doing that.
Mm-hmm. Possibilities are endless. We just all need to not have our day jobs anymore.
Really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you very much for Lizzie being on. I'm hoping at some point down the line we might have another episode with her and have a little catch up and see how she's doing with being a doctor. So some things that I'm working on this week. I am still writing patterns. I'm still hoping to finish off the small and start working on different sizes for the dog sweater. I'm also trying to gather up all my notes from previous pieces of work that I've worked on. I've made kind of random notes on like how much I casted on and little bits, but I haven't made many notes on some of the other projects that I've kind of worked on because I'm kind of like a free knitter. I don't really work from many patterns, so I just kind of make things up. But I am currently trying to turn some of those into patterns because I know that there's quite a few people out there that are interested. So leave a comment down below on some of the patterns that you would really like to see and I'll try and prioritize them. So I'm also working on the next season of Historic Cooking. I'm going to be filming that probably, we're going to be filming that next week, but quite looking forward to that. Yeah, but I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to like, subscribe, review, and most importantly, share. Really important if you can share this episode and hopefully get more people watching it or listening to it. And yeah, I will see you next Friday. Have a great week, everyone. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next episode.